Dave Cortez. I'm the director of the Sierra Club Lonestar Chapter. My pronouns are he and him. Born and raised in Texas, West Texas, specifically El Paso. Family going way back to Balmorhea and Presidio and Shafter and Northern Chihuahua. And I'm really honored that you all are here to spend time with us and our wonderful guest speakers to talk about this disaster of a plan for a border wall in West Texas, but also really across the Texas-Mexico border in the Rio Grande. I'm here with Bob Hendricks. Bob, if you can wave your hand, Vice Chair of the Sierra Club Lonestar Chapter. Shane Johnson, Clean Energy Organizer with the chapter, and Jordan Goodrich, Communications Manager with the Lone Star Chapter. We're spread throughout all the state, and one of the things I'd like you all to think about as we have this conversation and listen today, we've heard for years things like, oh, is it possible to win in Texas? Will Texas flip? Is big change possible? As someone who's been organizing in Texas, not as long as many of you all, but for the past 20 years, my whole career, I know that the only way to win, I've seen it, is when we band together from El Paso to Corpus Christi, from Amarillo to McAllen and Brownsville, and everywhere in between. So this issue, while it might be affecting folks out in West Texas, in the Big Bend, right there in the frontline communities, it affects each and every one of us. And it already has in many ways. Whether you visit the park, whether your social services have been hit because our governor has allocated millions and millions of dollars, public dollars, for failed border security programs, pulled them away from our public schools, pulled them away from environmental and pollution enforcement programs. This affects us all. So I'm really honored today to have you all here and our guest speaker. So with that, I'm going to give a verbal cue here for our next guest speaker, Bob. Forgive my pronunciation here. Krumenaker? Okay, he'll correct me. He's muted right now. He's going to come off. Want to welcome him. Bob is going to give us a little talk, and we'll hold questions. You can put questions in the chat, and Bob Hendricks will try to facilitate some of those. And then we'll go to Cristina Hernandez. But let me just briefly introduce Bob here. We've never met in person, but I've heard a lot of wonderful things about Bob. I know, Bob, you're a former superintendent, I believe, of Big Bend National Park. You, I think, are currently sitting on the South Rim, if your background.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's a great place. You're a shepherd of, or were a shepherd and continue to be an advocate for a place that is dear to many people's hearts. And I believe you're also chair of Keep Big Bend Wild. Is that right?
That is right.
All right. Well, Bob, floor is yours. Please take it away.
Well, thank you, Dave, and thanks everybody for participating today. This is a really important issue, and I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see a full screen with the Big
Yes,
Bend
sir.
entrance?
Looks
Okay,
good.
All right, very good. Well, I am going to make the assumption that people are here because they already know about Big Bend, so I'm only going to summarize what Big Bend is. But yes, I was the National Park Superintendent of Big Bend National Park and Rio Grande Wild and Scenic River for about 5 years, from 2018 until the middle of 2023, when I retired from the National Park Service. My knowledge and my credibility is related to the national park sites. So while I've got great concerns about the state park and the private lands that are also impacted by this potential wall, I will speak primarily about the National Park Service lands because that's what I know best and that's what I have credibility on. So Big Bend itself, of course, is in West Texas. The park dates from 1935 when the U.S. Congress established it, was not actually established and dedicated until 1944 because Congress insisted that Texas purchase the land and give it to the federal government, something that would never happen today. It's grown to over 800,000 acres. It's the seventh largest national park in the lower 48. And one interesting trivia is there are 14 National Park Service sites in the state of Texas. All of them could fit inside Big Bend with land left over for Big Bend Ranch State Park next door at 300,000 acres. And I believe all the state parks could also fit inside there. Um, so between the national park and the state park, they are 27% of the publicly accessible land in the state of Texas. And I think that's a really significant fact here. So Big Bend, just in brief, is three major ecosystems. The Chihuahuan Desert, this is part of the largest protected desert in North America. The Chisos Mountain Sky Island Range, which is just an amazing place. We often refer to that as the coolest place in Texas. And of course, the river corridor, which in a lot of ways is really the heart of the park. The river itself forms a 118-mile boundary of both the park and the nation, of course, along the south. And about 60% of it is in deep canyons. This is Santa Elena Canyon, the most upstream canyon. I think Bob Hendricks is also sitting at the mouth of Santa Elena Canyon. And the walls are about 1,500 feet here. So it is often said by people that the natural walls protect the park. That's true in 60% of it, but it's really not true in 100% of it. Big Bend National Park is part of the Big Bend sector of the Border Patrol, which is one of 9 sectors along the border, 7 sectors, sorry. The whole border is 1,952 miles. The Big Bend sector is by far the quietest part of the border in terms of any illegal activity. And, but wall ideas have come up a lot over time. The people in Boquillas who have put out this No Muro artwork, they've been on top of this issue for as long as it's been an issue. But I will admit, in the 5 years I was at Big Bend National Park, it was pretty quiet. And immigration was pretty quiet. You'll also hear people say that the walls and the terrain keep people from coming across. Not completely. It's still the quietest sector, but in the last several years, there have been between 100 and 200 people that have crossed each year. But in all honesty, that is a tiny fraction. It's 0.05% of all the southwest border crossings. So border security actually works in the national park. And I would add, in the Wild and Scenic River, between the two, I had responsibility for 245 miles, or 12.5% of that border. I will tell you, border security is important. I will tell you, I support a secure border. I will tell you, the Park Service works really closely with the Border Patrol. And yes, they get a bad name, and sometimes they deserve it. But frankly, inside Big Bend National Park, it worked really well. And one of the reasons it worked really well is that there is this memorandum of understanding between Homeland Security and the federal land management agencies. This dates to 2006, during the Bush II administration. And it basically says that Homeland Security and the federal land management agencies need to play well in the sandbox together, and they need to respect each other's mission. And neither has unilateral authority to say they're doing whatever the hell they want, or hell no to the other one. And I know it doesn't work everywhere, but it did work at Big Bend National Park. And in fact, in last year, as a retiree, I was asked to testify before Congress, wearing a tie for the first time in years, about how well border security actually works. And it works well without a wall. And why does it work so well? One, because of the cooperation. But the other reason, frankly, is it's not because it's a U.S. national park that people don't come across. This is the most remote area and most difficult terrain in Mexico. So if you are looking to immigrate across the U.S. border without being detected, there are way easier places to get. And I will tell you, most of the people who do come across in Big Bend, they actually give themselves up. So it's just not a real issue. So when Homeland Security suddenly decided they needed a wall again, and declared that there was an emergency, it just doesn't hold water. The data just do not support that in any way. So I never heard any elected official, Republican or Democrat, or any security official say they needed a wall in this area. So recent developments, you're probably all familiar with this website, which has the quote unquote smart wall map. I'm not terribly fond of that term. I don't think it's very smart at all. But for as long as they've had that up until February, it basically said this whole area the private land, the state park, the national park, and the wild and scenic river would be detection technology only. And frankly, that did not scare me or most other people. There is a lot of electronic detection already in the area. The county sheriff says he's got 245 cameras or sensors out there. I don't know how much of that overlaps what's in the national park, but between the Park Service, the sheriff's office, and the Border Patrol, there were a lot inside Big Bend National Park, and it worked. And frankly, if they want to upgrade that in similar ways that are really unobtrusive, most people don't have any objections, but apparently that's not what they're looking to do. So this map is a little bit fuzzy. It was the best screenshot that I could find. So on February 11th, with no notice and no public explanation, Homeland Security changed the map, and they basically said, we're going to put a physical wall, which is what's in green on this map, throughout the entire area, with the exception of the deep canyons, Colorado Canyon in the state park, which is the one to the left on the screen, and then three canyons inside the national park. And only two are showing up on this map. But nonetheless, that was a wake-up call, and that was the beginning of people mobilizing and saying, oh my God, what the hell? Are they serious about this? All right, well, there was an awful lot of objection to that, and it was very bipartisan. And on March 5th, which just happens to be the day that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was fired, within hours, the map changed. Again, no public notice, no explanation, but basically for most of the state park from Colorado Canyon down through the national park, suddenly it was detection technology only. And that told a lot of people they may not be acknowledging they're listening, but the political pressure was working. So unfortunately, I think a lot of the media reported that the good guys won, and I think a lot of people relaxed. And many of us were talking very frequently in the media saying it's not over. They can change this map at any time that they want to. What's also important to know is that back in February, they also waived federal law. Contracting law actually was last fall, but they waived all environmental and public involvement laws from that line on this map, which is between green and orange in the middle of the state park. Everything upstream of that, the federal laws like NEPA and the Clean Air Act and the National Historic Preservation Act no longer apply, which gives them essentially free rein. On the other hand, Texas is a private land state. They do not have unlimited authority to condemn land. I'm not an expert on that, but that is one of the saving graces here. That doesn't mean that'll stop it, but it does make it a little bit harder for them. All right, well, we were, to be honest, relaxing a little bit, thinking maybe we were going to win. And then last week on April 21st, they changed the map again. And some of our partners were actually looking at the website when this map changed about 3 times in an hour. And some of us wondered whether it was some GIS nerd 2,000 miles away, not even knowing it was live. But this is the last map that they published. And so it shows not a wall in most of the national park, but detection technology and patrol roads. So that's a new thing. So the orange is detection technology and patrol roads, and the green is vehicle barriers, which they had never discussed before. So I will tell you, there are no vehicles crossing the Rio Grande in this area. There is a historic low water crossing at Lajitas, and there is a historic bridge at La Linda, neither of which are in use. The bridge is barricaded off. Nobody can get past that. But nonetheless, Homeland Security thinks it would be useful to put up vehicle barriers. Now, what's even scarier to me, though, are these patrol roads. And in between Lajitas and Mariscal Canyon, and in between Mariscal Canyon and that little spur just above it, which is Rio Grande Village, they're talking about a new unpaved road parallel to the river, closer to the river than the existing river road. This would cross dozens of drainages through endangered species habitat and through recommended wilderness. This would be devastating to the national park. Maybe not as much as a wall would, but it's close. So this is a picture of a vehicle barrier that I pulled off the web. I don't know if this is exactly what they are looking at doing, but nonetheless, it would be something like this. It's my understanding this may be anchored into concrete. So you're looking at still a lot of construction that's going on there. So interestingly, again, huge outcry. And on April 22nd, the next day, the map went down. the map is still down. You cannot see what their plan is. They're totally, what's the opposite of transparent? Obscure, loose. I don't know what the right word is. So what are the impacts? I am not going to spend a lot of time on this because I think you all know, maybe not in as much detail as some of us, but huge natural resource impacts, huge cultural resource impacts, huge impacts to the visitor experience, and a huge impact on the regional economy. Big Bend alone creates a $63 million economic impact to the area, much of which is based on river use and astrotourism. These are the darkest night skies in the lower 48. And if they do put up a wall with stadium lights, there goes the astrotourism, there goes the night sky. And, you know, the other thing that isn't talked about enough is that the impact of a construction camp, and they're estimating, at least for the wall, 300 to 500 people for maybe as much as 2 years. Those of you who've been to Terlingua, imagine how that would impact Terlingua. Terlingua does not have enough water right now. It does not have a landfill that's adequate. It has virtually no medical care. It's 80 miles to a grocery store. The impact on Terlingua and other gateway communities, including Presidio, which is larger, but Christina is going to talk about that. It would just be huge and devastating. And let's see, my screen is now suddenly not moving. Okay.
Feel free to stop share if you want to try that
Yeah, all right.
and
I'm
see
going
if
to
it picks up.
reshare. Okay. Let me get off full screen. Sorry for the interruption here, folks.
No worries at all. And
Technology
folks,
works the way you want it to, right?
it does. Folks, just a reminder, please feel free to drop any questions you might have in the chat. We'll try our best to track them. All right, now we see your screen, Bob.
Okay, and let me get you all off the bottom so I can go full screen again. Okay, so this would also, of course, impact the wildness, and I have said and been quoted numerous times, there is no more greater impact to the wild character and sense of place of Big Bend National Park and its surrounding area than a wall or the associated infrastructure would be. So a massive community, what's the right word? Coalition, I guess, has formed. It's bipartisan, it's nonpartisan, and some of the leaders are these five guys on the right, who are the sheriffs from the five Big Bend counties, led by Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland on the left. And what's really, really interesting about Sheriff Cleveland and I is that he and I testified before Congress on that same panel. We had never met. He's from Terrell County, which is just east of the national park. We had never actually met in the 5 years I was in the area, but we met on Capitol Hill. He was testifying in favor of a border security bill. I was testifying against it. But, you know, we agreed on 80%. We exchanged business cards. And then when he came out against the wall, I called him, thanked him, and we are now best friends and we are allies. And of course, you all know about the statewide rally in Austin on April the 4th. And so, you know, this in 40 years with the National Park Service, working in 15 different National Park Service areas all over the country, I have never seen a coalition come together in the way this one has. And this is really exciting and really encouraging. And so this is a list of just some of the organizations, both local and national, that have gotten involved in this on the left. And I no doubt am missing some of them. And people can fill me in on who I don't even know is involved in this. And on the right, these are some of the local governments that have come out with ordinances or resolutions against. And I'm not listing specific politicians, but what's absolutely remarkable is all 14 county judges from El Paso all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, more Republicans, I think, than Democrats, they have come out asking for transparency and involvement. These five sheriffs who have impeccable border security credentials, they have come out saying, we support border security. And if you've ever looked at Mr. Cleveland's social media feed, you will know he's got cred and he's committed. He spent 20 some odd years with the Border Patrol. But he says quite openly, the wall is not the answer. It will do no good. It is a horrible waste of money at the expense of destroying this area. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about Keep Big Bend Wild, which is the group that I am representing right now. As I said, I'm retired from the National Park Service, so I no longer speak for the Park Service. I speak with the Park Service a lot, but I am not them anymore. So Keep Big Bend Wild formed in 2021 before the wall was an issue, or at least a current issue. It's a coalition of citizens working with the Park Service. They're not technically members, and in this administration, they are, for understandable reasons, laying really, really low. But the goal that Keep Big Bend Wild had was to resurrect interest in a 1970s era recommendation that the Park Service made with a lot of public involvement and an EIS to permanently protect the still undeveloped areas of the park from additional development by law. And that would be by basically invoking the Wilderness Act of 1964, but with carefully drawn boundaries, not impacting any of the current uses, users, or infrastructure. So everybody who can visit the park and do what they do now legally would still be able to do it. And the areas in between would be wilderness and prevented from having additional development, anything more complex than a trail. Prior to the wall, the strategy was to go all around the state, raise awareness, build support, tweak the map a bit, educate people as to why this was valuable and how you would do it. But I'll be honest, it was difficult to get too much enthusiasm. Nobody really seemed to be objecting, but nobody seemed to think there was a problem that needed to be fixing that would be worth trying to get a bill through a very conservative congressional delegation that we have in Texas. But as I said, there is no greater threat to the wild character of the Big Bend National Park than a border wall and its associated infrastructure. And clearly, if Keep Big Bend Wild, we're not going to get involved in the border wall issue. What's the point of our even existing? So we are, as I said, we were here before the wall. We are absolutely optimistic that we are going to beat the wall. It's not going to beat itself. This is going to take a ton of work from everybody on this call and as many people as possible. But I do think we're going to beat the wall. But we also want to encourage people in this coalition, and particularly in the Sierra Club and similar groups, to think beyond the wall. Because if there's nothing if there's nothing else we should have just learned, it's that the park is not nearly as protected as we thought it once was. But this coalition, we're talking on Capitol Hill with Republicans and Democrats. And in all honesty, the Republicans aren't saying anything out loud, but they are listening to us. And I actually am optimistic that Senator Cornyn is actually going to come out against the wall after the runoff. I think he could win more votes if he did it now, but that's not my call. So we could never have imagined the kind of support the park has a few months ago. As I said, this coalition is strong, it's bipartisan. And if wilderness legislation were to be introduced and passed in a Democratic Congress that hopefully we will have soon, it would not impact any of the current uses or infrastructure, as I said. We would certainly have to acknowledge the need for a secure border. There'd be lines drawn on the ground. What you see on the right is Keep Big Bend Wild's recommendation. Everything in green would be wilderness. And you can see there's still a fair amount of area, in addition to the roads and power lines that currently exist along the river, in acknowledgement that the Border Patrol does have a role there. And, we have to think about what we can win. So this is modeled very closely on the Park Service's own proposal from the 70s with some minor tweaks. So in essence, wilderness would prevent any additional development or motor vehicle use in those areas, things that are by policy and by default protected now, but not necessarily for the long run. But here's the important thing. DHS has the authority to waive all federal laws relating to environment or public involvement. Wilderness itself would not stop that. But on the other hand, if a wilderness bill were to get through Congress in the next 2 years with strong public support and bipartisan support in Texas, it would be really difficult for them to override that. And frankly, if we had enough public support, we're already laying the seeds, we could actually try to get a statement in the bill that would prohibit them from waiving all laws and maybe going as far as prohibiting them from building a wall in the park. So I will tell you that we, both the Park Service and Keep Big Bend Wild, have done tribal consultation. There are 17 affiliated tribes plus a few from Texas and 8 have engaged, and 100% of those that have engaged have said, we support this. This is pre-wall. I was talking to Christina earlier today. We really need to reach out to all the tribes now because I think we would get a lot more. There's not enough time to read these statements, but in essence, the tribes that engaged said the best way to protect our cultural heritage is to keep bulldozers away from it. So I cannot imagine any of these folks are going to be in favor of a wall. So wilderness is an opportunity we have this generation. It would reduce uncertainty about the future management of the park, and it would keep basically the park managed the same way it is right now. Hopefully, looking at the very bottom statement, hopefully we could use it to prohibit a wall as well. And wilderness is not a new thing. 55 other national, well, if Big Bend got wilderness, it would be the 55th U.S. National Park System unit that has designated wilderness, the 5th along the southern border, some of which are Forest Service and BLM lands. Guadalupe Mountains National Park has designated wilderness. This would be by far the largest one in Texas. So there's not enough time to go over all of this right now. I want to preserve time for Q&A and for Christina, but your voice does matter. This is from our handout, and I'm going to put up a QR code in a minute that will take you to our website, and you can go to the border wall thing. But basically, I did a detail on a fellowship on Capitol Hill a number of years ago, and I will tell you, if you call your congressional reps in Washington, D.C., they will ask you what your zip code is. If you're from their district or their state, they do pay attention. And if enough of them come out in favor or against something in particular, that does get discussed in that office. And as I said, no Republican legislator in the federal offices that represent Texas, nor the governor, and very few Republican legislators in Texas have come out and said anything. A couple have actually come out opposed. So the fact they're saying nothing tells me they're not in favor and they're just waiting for the right political moment, which frankly I think long since has passed, but it's time. So what can you do? You can help us or any other group that is fighting the wall. Take a picture of this QR code, or we'll make that available. Our website's on the bottom of this, keepbigbendwild.org. As I said, we are not the only people fighting the wall, and we're working as close as we can with the No Big Bend Wall Coalition. But, in the 21st century, nobody's in charge. What we are doing somewhat uniquely, I think, is we've got the connections on Capitol Hill. We've got the connections in local government. We've got the experience as federal land managers. We've got some cred, and I think it's helping a lot. So anyway, thank you for your time, and I will stop sharing and turn this back over to Jordan.
Thank you very much, Bob. And we do have a few questions in the chat. The first one is, who decides how the map changes?
I wish I knew. Nobody knows. They are totally obscure about that. There's no discussion at all. So we do think this is driven by Homeland Security in Washington. The fact that it changed after Kristi Noem was forced out does suggest, and we've got some intel to back this up, that there are some senior people in Border Patrol who actually think that a wall is not necessary. But I think the most recent changes give us a little pause because those same people may think vehicle barriers and patrol roads are a good idea. So it's being done in CBP, DHS, BP, whatever your favorite acronym is. They are talking to the national park managers, but there's no evidence they're actually listening.
Okay, thank you. Another question is there a drop dead date for approval?
No, and there's no vote. So even though we are recommending everybody talk to their congressionals, this decision is made behind closed doors by people who are appointed by the president. And so what we have to do to be effective is generate enough political pressure from their party. I love it when Democrats support us right now, but they have no influence for the most part. But I will tell you that some of the Democrats that we are talking to on Capitol Hill have good relationships with people like Mark Wayne Mullen, the new DHS secretary. So those conversations behind the scenes are really, really important. So we can't give up, but we don't know how the decisions will be made. We don't know when the decision will be made. And there's some concern that they already have contracts. And we understand that they are giving the very vague definition as shown on that last map they're telling the contractors, tell us how you would do this. We understand they have the input from the National Park Service, but again, we have no idea whether they're going to listen to any of that. So whether that's going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month, I think just about everybody thinks if we can delay this through the midterms, that will be really helpful. But frankly, we don't know if we can.
Rick, thank you. And do you know if the Audubon Society is involved in this effort?
I don't. If anyone here is associated with the Audubon, I'd love to talk to them. But no, I've not had any contact or heard anything about Audubon.
Okay. Is the bill written and sponsored yet?
The wilderness bill?
Yes.
We've drafted one. It is not sponsored. We shared it with Tony Gonzalez, who, of course, is history right now. We've shared it with John Cornyn's office. But in all honesty, pre-wall, no Republican legislator was ready to introduce it. So we are being very careful not to ask for things that they'll say no to. So we've been educating them. We have been telling them about how we're building the coalition. But I think it's a whole new game in the next Congress. We are not going to submit a bill now. There's no point to it. But we have the verbal support of every member of the New Mexico delegation. We have quite a few Texan legislators who have said they would support this. In fact, I think, if we defeat the wall, our chances of getting a bill in the next Congress are very good. Just real quick, again, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great talking to everybody here. Let me add one additional thing. You guys have all talked about using networks and getting active, and I obviously agree with that. But I will also add that in the state of Texas, where most of our elected officials, particularly at the federal level, outside of Austin at least, are conservatives, business-oriented Republicans, it is really, really important that we think in our network about who doesn't think the way we do and who can we perhaps influence. So if any of you are associated with businesses that can take positions, including just signing up to support Christina's organization or mine or even the Sierra Club, businesses, whether we like it or not, carry more weight than citizens do right now. And that would be real important. The other thing I should say is the National Sierra Club is very involved, as is Keep Big Bend Wild, in the National Wilderness Coalition. And they have invited me to speak to your National Wildlands Network of activists in July. So some of you may be part of that group as well. So thank you.